This is Midwest Moxie, a show about our region's visionary founders and the experiences that shape them. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher, Executive Director of Five Lakes Institute. John Pattison stopped to taste a Beyond Meat burger sample on the way to a business class at NYU and got interested in alternative protein. Ian Johnson's jobs culturing cells and developing new cell lines led him to it. Both went to San Francisco to work at alternative protein startups, and after meeting, decided to start one of their own. In 2020, John and Ian founded Cultured Decadence, a startup aiming to grow meat from lobster cells. They moved the company to Madison, raised $2.1 million, and grew to 9 employees. In 2022, Cultured Decadence was acquired by Upside Foods for an undisclosed price. John and Ian, welcome to Midwest Moxie.
Thanks, Kathleen. Great to be here.
Thanks for the invite.
John, you grew up in Wisconsin, but after graduating from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee with an economics degree, worked at 2 investment firms, went to China to work at an ad agency and study Chinese, interned at the White House, and spent 4 years in the Army. Then you got your MBA at NYU. You had a lot of options. What was it about sampling that Beyond Meat burger that got you interested in the alternative protein industry?
It was really such an unexpected experience knowing that people were spending millions and millions of dollars in their careers trying to make something that was identical to beef, but actually didn't touch beef at all, or chicken, or whatever animal protein you want to think of. And I think part of it too is actually how it compared to the black bean burgers of like the early 90s that my mom was trying to get me to eat.
Right.
Very, very different veggie burger experience. And it was one of those things that just kept gnawing at me while I was still in business school and going through some of the internships in finance. You know, how could I be a part of this? It seemed like a phenomenal mission. And it was very scientific, heavy science focused and dependent on that. And although I was an economics major, I really enjoyed the chemistry classes I took and didn't expect there to be an opportunity to kind of marry a career in food and science and do something entrepreneurial. And so that's kind of what got me involved.
Well, and that science thing, that's where Ian comes in. Because, Ian, you grew up in Pittsburgh. You got an undergraduate degree in molecular biology and chemistry from University of Pittsburgh. You worked as a research associate at several companies in Pittsburgh before picking up and moving to San Francisco with no job, I might add, lined up. Fortunately, you landed a senior research associate position at Finless Foods, which makes cell-cultured and plant-based seafood alternatives. What appealed to you about getting into this industry?
So I grew up and my mom was vegetarian. So I think I've always kind of had a different perspective when it came to meat. Always kind of understood that there was some amount of negatives with how we currently produce it. And so I think I am a meat eater myself, and it's something I did not really want to give up. So it felt like a really good, middle ground where it's, something I'm passionate about, something that can make a large positive impact to the world, and at the same time, I get to eat the product that I work on, which was a rare thing to do in science. So I think that the cultured meat industry really gave me a little bit of all that.
So you guys both ended up in San Francisco, kind of the epicenter of this emerging cultured meat industry. You met, you hit it off, but you decided to start a company. You wanted to leave San Francisco, and you decided to put your startup in the Midwest. Why Madison?
I think a lot of the reason for that was actually having been through startups in San Francisco and realizing that, well, there's an amazing talent pool and there's great sources of capital there. The coasts don't have a monopoly on world-changing ideas, and they also don't have a monopoly on world-class talent. And I think probably me being from Wisconsin and Ian being from Pittsburgh, we knew that firsthand in our own networks. And when we were looking at different cities to locate in, we wanted to prioritize for talent pool, industry and academic expertise. So Wisconsin and Madison in particular has a great combination of life sciences, cell line, cell bio expertise in industries, but also food science. And we also wanted to be very responsible with investor dollars and try to make that money go as far as possible, given the significant scientific hurdles that we needed to overcome. And so we knew it was going to be a long ramp up. And sort of a final benefit was, hey, it'd be great to build something in a place where you could also scale it. And the Midwest is certainly known for being a manufacturing powerhouse, not only for the country, but for the world. And I think it's exciting to see some of those legacy industries now transition into more advanced manufacturing and biotech industries. And we were hoping to be a part of that, just with a little bit of a different twist.
So, Ian, did you make a push for Pittsburgh?
No, I did not. Unfortunately, John did a very good job of convincing me to try Madison. And just on that note, I fully echo everything John just said about the Midwest and Madison, Wisconsin in general. But also that is where embryonic stem cells were first discovered. And not a lot of people know that, and that's a big part of the talent pool and how it was developed into some positive help for our company as well.
So, you got to Madison shortly after you started Culture Decadence. Ian got COVID, and you guys were a startup. It was all hands on. So, John started doing some of the lab work, and Ian, you were coaching him via FaceTime. How did that work out for you guys?
Yeah, I think that that went about how you would expect for a non-scientist to be doing some heavy-duty science work. That particular experiment did fail, but it did teach me a lot about John. And I think as a co-founder, the willingness to step up and do whatever is needed when the time is, that was a big foundation of what we built Culture Decadence on.
So, John, you thought you were doing okay, like, you were moving these slides, the cells to the slides, and what was wrong with
Look,
what you were doing?
yeah, Kathleen, I mean, we had just received our first check from Generator. So they were the first 100,000 in, and that, it's also part of the reason, why we came to Wisconsin. So, we need to make progress. And, it's too bad Ian has COVID, but I mean, we got to keep cranking here and make moving forward. So, yeah, I dabbled in trying to do some isolations, and I was very excited about because I thought I was, maybe had some great results. And Ian took one look at the close-up pictures of the microscope that I was showing him, and he's like, "No, man, that's just wait, just wait. It'll save us money by you not using consumables." You know, despite it being a week delay for
Oh. You
for me
had
to get back to the
you
lab.
you had bacteria rather than lobster cells?
There was a lot of stuff going on in there, none of which I think was lobster cells. Well, they were there. They just weren't in the state they needed to be. But
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Ian
yeah.
Ian came in and I think quickly got us on track, and we were actually getting cells at that point. So
We're going to
Yeah.
talk a little later more about the cells and the challenges to doing that. But just to get the arc of this story, you sold Culture Decadence just 2 years after starting it to Upside Foods. Why did you decide to sell so quickly?
I think from a scientific perspective, we thought that Upside would be a great partner for the two, bigger issues in our industry, which are scale and regulatory approval. And I think John and I did a really good job of building, a core foundational knowledge, data, products, patents around crustaceans, and we saw a faster path to regulatory approval and scale through joining forces with Upside. And it proved to be true, as Upside was the first to be FDA approved in the United States. So I think it went along with our expectations at the time.
yeah, I think a couple of things that allowed us to be put in that position too. I mean, one, probably first and foremost, is just the team that we were able to build. We had 7 other people on our team in addition to Ian and myself. And it wouldn't have been possible without them. Their work ethic, their dedication, and just, kind of raw intelligence. The second is obviously our investors, and having that support for a really kind of out there idea. Not only are we going to be a Wisconsin lobster company, we're going to be a cellular Wisconsin lobster company. So probably an N of one within 1,000 miles from that. And then third, when Ian and I came into this space and decided or even started thinking about building a company together, one of the things I think that allowed for our success and for our team's success and the company's success, as much as you can say that, is just alignment and focus on the mission and realizing that that is more important than kind of the individual. And for us, like, our mission was to create cell cultured food, and to do that, to have a positive impact on the planet and animals and humans. And whether we did that by ourselves and quote unquote won, or we did it as part of a team, it didn't really matter to us. We just wanted to accomplish that mission. And so, to echo what Ian was saying, we felt like joining with Upside gave us the highest probability in the industry, the highest probability of success.
The two of you did a really good job of defining your roles and working together to build cultured decadence. But there must have been challenges. Tell us, yeah, how do two people run a company together? John, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think what made it work for us is that we approached it from a partnership standpoint from the beginning. Although we did connect on, I think the first commonality we found was golf. Um, but ultimately, it wasn't like we were friends for a long time beforehand, or friends generally. And we were really just solely focused on the mission and doing what was right, irrespective of if that meant I was wrong in an instance or he was wrong in an instance. We were always trying to seek, what is the truth of the situation and how do we make progress and move forward. Um, it's not to say we didn't have disagreements and, some fights is too strong of a word, but, strong conversations with each other. But it was all, I think at the end of the day, like, we never left the office angry, and we always came back to kind of that commonality and focus on the mission and doing what was hopefully best for the company. But I always love Ian's thoughts on these types of questions too. So
Yeah, I think my perspective on it is we approached it like we wanted to have success for the business. I think that approach was to maintain a healthy work personal life balance. I think we centered around some common interest, and it's he mentioned golf. I like to say sports because we ended up going to so many basketball games in Milwaukee. But I think that led to both of us being competitive, and that competitiveness also led to a healthy relationship where we both wanted to succeed more than we wanted to be right individually, and it just made for a strong partnership.
So, Upside, which acquired you, along with another company called Good Meat, both have FDA and USDA approval for their cultivated chicken. How much of this cultivated protein product is on the market right now?
uh, really small amounts. It's primarily available via kind of limited one-off events or in a couple, partnerships with different chefs and restaurants. We're hoping, and I think there's a lot of momentum behind it, that as the industry scales, it'll be much more widely available, and at price points that are definitely more accessible as well. But it's going to be several years, right? And that's just to get into restaurants, and then looking even beyond that, getting into grocery stores and other food service outlets will take some time. But like any new technology, there's a lot of upfront work to even just get to that first pound of meat, right? Or that first dollar of revenue. And so it's exciting to see that we're there, and we'll continue to grow on that.
There's been more of a focus on growing protein from chicken cells, which is what Upside Foods, the company that acquired you, mostly does. What were the business reasons that made you decide to focus on seafood and lobsters in particular?
When we were looking at the market, we were looking at it sort of from three different buckets. One, true business case, like, hey, high price point product can we go after, especially knowing that this type of technology is going to be at a premium for a while when it first comes to market. Second, where was there an opportunity to develop unique IP, technical IP? And then third, where did we feel like there was a really strong environmental sustainability and mission driven focus? And I think seafood and lobster in particular really hits all of those buckets.
So you had really good business reasons for doing this. The high price point makes a ton of sense, right? But
Mhm.
there were some challenges. Lobsters and their cells weren't very well studied from a scientific standpoint, right?
That is correct. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm not sure. But I think for us, we wanted to solve a hard problem, and I think the price point was a benefit of that. And so when we started, there were no cell lines, media formulations. There wasn't even a sequenced lobster genome at the start. I think that felt like a mountain to climb, but I looked at it like in a unique advantage, right? There was only two crustacean companies across the whole world. And for us, we wanted to create a product that we could sell and we knew we could make money on, and it would be very difficult for other people to try to copy what we were doing. So, I think lobster was the most sensible choice for that.
So, Ian, if you didn't, I mean, you said there was the genome hadn't been sequenced, there weren't any cell lines. How did you start trying to? You had to figure all that stuff out, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had about a 4 month period of time where I did nothing but read papers. And when you look back at all that research, it goes all the way back to the 60s, 50s, and that's the last time people really studied some of these animals. So it was picking up on that. Thinking out of the box a little bit here and there, and honestly, just being able to try hundreds of conditions and experiments, and I think that was a good balance between John and I, where I was able to fully dive into the science, and he was able to fully handle the business side. It made for a great partnership.
You guys actually went to Maine and talked with people in the lobster industry. In a sense, like you were invading their territory. I'm surprised they were even open to that. How did you manage that?
It might have been our first expense as a company was to go to Maine, and we went there in February of 2020, even before we came out to Madison. And when we had initially reached out, you're right. I think there was some hesitation and some cautiousness. But when we said, "Hey, we're going to be out there," they were people at the University of Maine were very generous with their time. The director of the Lobster Institute out there, a guy named Rick Waller, was really, again, kind and welcoming. And I think what was interesting for both of us is one, it gave us a better understanding of the industry firsthand, as well as the problems that they see. For example, the Gulf of Maine is one of the fastest warming bodies of water on the planet, and that impacts these lobster fisheries. But also, ultimately, there's a lot of just scientific interest in things that people haven't put a lot of resources to and don't necessarily get a lot of grant funding for. And we were willing to do that and take that on as a startup because we had to. And so, from a pure scientific interest standpoint, I think there was some intrigue and ways that we could collaborate and work together. Ian was definitely much closer to those folks, the scientists, the researchers, the grad students. But I would sit in on the conversation sometimes, and it's just super fascinating. I mean, they're super interesting animals. They can regenerate their limbs. They don't really age on a cellular level. But I don't want to take all the fun stuff away. I'll let Ian jump in and tell you the
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
science.
tell us. I mean, you guys had these lobsters living with you in your office. Tell us about lobsters.
Yes, yes. Lobsters are equally unique as they were difficult to grow and work with. John mentioned a few of the highlights, and the good part is their uniqueness fit a lot of our business case. So, the time it takes a lobster to grow to a harvestable age is around 9 years. That for us, ideally, we could get these cells to grow much faster than that. The fact that they don't age, that means that they are immortal. That fits well with creating cell lines that you want to, not change over time and grow to large scales. They regrow their limbs, which again is good. It allowed us to take small, biopsy samples of lobsters, without killing them for our process. So they do a lot of crazy, unique things, but they were good members of our team.
I mean, every once in a while you'd walk in and one of them would not be with you anymore. How'd that happen?
Yeah, they sometimes they would get a little bored in the tank, and would go after each other. So sometimes we'd come in and there would only be floating lobster bits in the tank, which was one of them have sacrificed, made the ultimate sacrifice for the company.
And you said they're immortal. Are you saying if nothing happened, no accidents, they wouldn't die?
Yeah, that is the idea. The two biggest reasons lobsters die are that they are caught from humans, and that they actually get so big that when they try to molt out of their shell, they just get stuck. So there has been lobsters, 50-pound lobsters that have been caught, as big as a human man, but they are very rare to catch. And so, yeah, if nothing has any ill will against them, they will probably grow for forever.
So maybe that's your next scientific project to extract the secret of lobster immortality for humans.
Yeah, exactly.
And an elixir,
Right,
Hmm.
right, right.
Yep.
What has happened since Upside bought you? I know you guys both went with Upside initially to help them out, but will we see cultivated lobster protein on the market anytime soon?
It's definitely Upside owns all of the IP and all the efforts that were made on that protein. I think that there's a pipeline of products that are in process, right? So I'm sure it's in there somewhere. It's probably not, the next one or two things, but
Sounds like
seafood generally as a category is really important, and we as Americans consume a ton of seafood and a ton of crustaceans. Uh,
yeah, sounds like
so
chickens has been their priority, right?
yes, yeah, chicken is there. Well, that's the product that is on the market now, and that will be scaled up in the near future.
Yeah. And as you've said, there are so many challenges to doing this kind of stuff. I just wanted to mention too, John, one of the things you've started doing recently is you have become an entrepreneur in residence at Titletown Tech, the partnership between the Green Bay Packers and Microsoft. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great role that I'm starting into, helping out the Titletown Tech Fund. So it's a large venture capital fund based out of Green Bay and formed through that partnership that you mentioned. And so I'll help out with pipeline development of companies and existing portfolio companies, potential portfolio companies, and really just generally getting out the word about Titletown, and that there is this phenomenal resource for entrepreneurs and startups and companies in the region. Titletown is also involved in the Microsoft Co-Innovation Lab at UWM, which is a really exciting thing for not just companies that are interested in AI and how that can be utilized for their businesses and their industries, but also it's specifically focused in on manufacturing, which is something that this region does really, really well.
And you're going to be based in Milwaukee, but companies from across the region can come and talk to you.
Yeah, definitely across the state, region, the country, uh, open for business for anyone.
Well, what an exciting time for you guys. You did this really hard thing and got the company sold, and it's going to be so fun to watch what you do next and where you take all of this entrepreneurial abilities. So, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us the story.
Thanks, Kathleen. It was really cool to be here. Great conversation, and seeing Ian again too.
Yeah, this is great
I
talking.
I used to see him every day, and now it's just once in a while. So I
Yeah.
don't know if that's better or worse.
Well, it's a great lesson in, when you sell your startup, the transition you go through and the way things change.
Yeah.
But you guys are used to that because you're startup guys, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Take care.
Yep.
You can read more about today's guest by visiting wuwm.com. Don't forget, you can listen to the show as a podcast if you'd like to take us on the go. Just search for Midwest Moxie wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher. Midwest Moxie was created by executive producer Audrey Nowakowski and me. Today's episode was produced by Audrey Nowakowski and engineered by WUWM's Jason Reevy. Support for Midwest Moxie comes from Microsoft, whose efforts to drive technology development across the Midwest and beyond include its National TechSpark community engagement work, which started in Wisconsin, its role as co-founder of Titletown Tech in Green Bay, and its new AI co-innovation lab at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. More information is available at Microsoft.com. And from Quarles & Brady LLP, a multidisciplinary Am Law 200 firm with approximately 550 attorneys who support large and small businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to startups and entrepreneurs across the country. More at Quarles.com.